So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Science of Happiness webinar. I have started recording, and so I found that in the last webinar, this is Brenda Walton from Brenda Walton Inspires and creator of the Worthy program. And I found in the last webinar that I did that when I left my camera on recording me while I'm talking to you, it was distracting to me to see my face on the screen, and it felt like I was talking to myself. So I am going to start by turning off my video. You'll see my picture pop up on the screen. And then I'm going to just share with you the I think you can see the presentation slide now, so I'm just going to get started. I'm excited for those of you who are joining me live today, and for those of you who will be listening to the replay. I am passionate about helping people live their best lives. That's why I'm doing these webinars. That's why I do Brenda Walton Inspires. That's why I have continued to educate myself and advance my own journey towards empowerment. And I just want to help people live their best lives. And so throughout, if you have questions, you can pop them in the comment box below, or I will address all the questions at the end of the webinar. So feel free to post them. If I don't see them during the webinar, I'll make sure that I come back to them and respond to them all at the end. And so to get started, I actually have a question for you. So on a scale from 1 to 10, where 10 represents absolute bliss in your life and 1 represents misery, in the comment box below, give me a number on a scale of 1 to 10 of where you are now and where you want to be. So maybe you're currently at a 5 and you want to be a 6, or maybe you're at a 7 and you want to be at an 8. Whatever it might be, just put your comments in the comment box. And I just want to see where you're at when we get started. I also want to share with you my promise today. I have a few things that I want to share with you. The first being that I want to share with you why happiness is so important to me, why it has become a theme in my life. I actually it's ironic. I had a colleague of mine who I know from another side of my business, not the empowerment training side, but another side of my business. And when I began this journey and started doing a bunch of the work that I'm doing, and I found that I personally changed my outlook on life. And I was having a conversation with him one day, and he commented on it because he had phoned me and he asked me how I was, and my response was, I'm awesome, it's a great day. And he got asking me questions about what I was doing, and through my explanation of, you know, my journey through training with Jack Canfield and positive psychology and all these other things that I've done, his comment to me was, are you sure this isn't a cult that you're in? And my response to him immediately, of course, was, well, if it's cult, bring it on. Bring me more Kool-Aid, because this is the best I've felt in a really long time. So I'm going to throughout share with you some more reasons why happiness is so important to me. I'm going to give you some tools and techniques to help you increase your own levels of happiness. And like I said at the end, I'm going to make sure that I've answered all of your questions. And for those of you who stay with me to the very end, I have some gifts that I'm going to offer you. So let's get started. In terms of happiness, the dictionary defines happiness as a state of being happy, which sounds obvious, but to me a little ambiguous. Some other definitions that I found are good fortune, or a state of well-being and contentment, or a pleasurable or satisfying experience. The ancient Greeks defined happiness as the joy that we feel when we're striving for our potential, and Aristotle described it as happiness is a state of activity. But none of these really, for me, explained what happiness actually is. So how would you define happiness for yourself? Give that some thought. Maybe if you have a journal, make some notes about that, or put some of your thoughts in the comment box below. If I were to get a bit more specific, I might use the following definition, which is happiness is the appreciation of life and moments of pleasure. I mentioned earlier that I completed my certification in positive psychology, and as a practitioner of positive psychology, we talk about happiness in positive psychology as the experience of frequent positive emotions such as joy or interest, and infrequent negative emotions such as sadness or anxiety. The truth is, we just really need to give ourselves permission to be human. There is a range of emotions that we experience from time to time: happy, sad, joy, sorrow. And we need to just be patient with ourselves and give ourselves permission to be human. And positive psychology and the science of happiness is experiencing that full range of emotions and being very aware when you are in this downward spiral or the deep dark pit, that you intentionally move yourself. We call it north of neutral. So every person has a normal set point of happiness. You might say spend the weekend with family and experience some real highs and some real joyful moments. But as the week goes on, you sort of settle back into this normal neutral set point that we all have. You might have some sad news that you received, and that drops you below your normal set point. But as you move through that and you experience that, you would move back to your set point. We all have it. We all have a sort of set point. And that's why I asked you the question at the beginning of the webinar, where are you at on a scale of 1 to 10? Because we all sort of have this normal set point. And the science of happiness and focusing on happiness and focusing on positive psychology is giving people the tools and the skills so that they can move even slightly north of neutral, so north of our normal set point for happiness. And so why is happiness important, and why is it worth investing in? If I asked you to think of some of the pessimists or unhappy people in your life, I think that we could all probably identify at least one person. When I was studying positive psychology, I came across numerous studies that helped me to really appreciate why happiness is so important and so worth investing in. And I want to just take the next few moments to share with you a few of those stats. So people with depression are at 4.5 times greater risk for heart attack. 4.5 times. That's significant. Men with high hostility, high anger, are 2 times at greater risk for cardiovascular mortality. And negative emotions and stress, when we experience them, they actually produce inflammation in our body. If you happen to watch the TED Talk by Dan Gilbert, if you haven't seen it yet, go ahead and Google it when we're done the webinar, but there's a TED Talk by a man by the name of Dan Gilbert. And in the TED Talk, he provided an example comparing happiness levels of lottery winners compared to quadriplegic patients. And the results were surprising. He found that after 1 year of living with change, both groups leveled out at the same level of happiness, which is surprising because I think a lot of people sort of imagine how much happier they would be if they won the lottery. But the truth is, they all level out to the same level of happiness. Happy people tend to suffer less from depression, anxiety, and even social phobias. They're less likely to have substance abuse problems. They report less physical symptoms and take less medications. And they actually have fewer hospital visits. Happy people tend to exercise more and have stronger immune systems. They tend to have graduated from some form of post-secondary, and they tend to volunteer more and are more likely to help others. So again, in that TED Talk by Dan Gilbert, he explained that the brain generates two types of happiness: natural happiness and synthetic happiness. And he defined them as this: how natural happiness is the result of getting something that we wanted, and synthetic happiness is what we make when we don't get what we want. So what he's really saying is that it's possible to create your own happiness. There are chemicals in our human brains that are related to happiness: serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin. Serotonin, the first one, is considered a happy hormone because of its mood boosting effects. And a lack of that hormone, a lack of serotonin, is associated with depression. So if you want to give yourself a boost of serotonin, focus on positive memories for things that you're grateful for, and that will help you to produce more serotonin. You can go outside and get some sunshine, because when sunlight is absorbed by our skin, vitamin D is produced, which in turn helps produce serotonin. And another thing that you might try is low intensity exercise, such as going for a walk, because that also boosts the release of serotonin, the happiness hormone. The second one, dopamine, is a pleasure hormone. It increases our drive to accomplish a goal so that we can experience the pleasure of reward. And so if you want to increase your levels of dopamine, try setting some specific measurable goals and achieving them. It can be as simple as setting a goal to make your bed every morning for a week. And dopamine levels rise with serotonin when exercise. So when you do exercise, even moderate exercise, you're providing yourself that double benefit of serotonin and dopamine. And oxytocin, the final one there, is considered the love hormone, and it's released upon physical contact. So from childbirth through to a hug, oxytocin is there to provide feelings of love and trust. If you want to give yourself some boost of oxytocin, get a massage or hug and cuddle with loved ones or family and friends. That physical touch is enough to release oxytocin within your brain and increase your levels of happiness. The director of a Harvard study of adult development, Robert Waldinger, shared some findings from an ongoing study that he conducted regarding happiness. And the study is 75 years in the making. It started in 1938 with a group of college students from Harvard. The study evolved, it's continued to evolve to include more participants, and every 2 years a research group conducts interviews, obtains medical records, and completes brain scans. Waldinger states that the clearest message that we get from this 75-year study is that good relationships keep us happier and healthier, period. The three main lessons that we can learn from his study is, first, The more socially connected someone is to family and friends and community, the healthier and happier they are. People who are isolated suffer from poor health and are less happy. So the more socially connected we are, the happier and healthier we are. The second relates to the quality of relationships. So someone can be in a crowd and still feel lonely. So it's not about the number of friends that you have, it's about the connection that you have with the people in your life. And finally, the third is that good relationships don't just protect our bodies, they protect our brains too. The study found that when participants had others to lean on and continually develop close relationships, those individuals experienced more overall happiness. So we know the importance of having good relationships and to being happy, but how do we develop and sustain good relationships? Well, it can be as simple as replacing screen time with FaceTime with the people that you care about. In today's world with technology and electronics, it's so easy to get consumed with that screen time, but cultivating new or enhancing the relationships that you have can really develop deeper relationships for you. You can liven up relationships by doing something new together. So you might go to a cooking class, or you might start a nightly ritual of going for a walk after supper. Maybe establishing date nights or starting a game night with a group of friends. When I grew up, Sunday was always family supper day. So my grandmother would drive out to our farm, and she'd get there sort of early morning, and we'd spend the day doing stuff with her. And then there'd always be this big family meal before she headed back home. And it was just a regular thing that we did. And I still to this day have very fond memories of that. You might also want to reach out to family members that you've lost touch with. So I know whenever I go back to family reunions or run into a family member that I haven't seen for a long time, it just fills me with such joy to see them again. So it's another way of developing deeper relationships. Gratitude is another great way to foster a happier disposition. So there is this PhD, Robert Emmons. He's been coined as the world's leading scientific expert on gratitude, and his research findings show that people who regularly practice gratitude report experiencing more joy, pleasure, optimism, happiness, and even higher levels of positive emotions. He emphasizes the importance of making a distinction between feeling grateful and being grateful. There is a big difference between the two. Feelings of gratitude develop from the way that we see the world, the thoughts we have, and the way the perceptions of the way that we think things should be. But being grateful is a choice. And gratitude provides a perspective from which we can view life in its entirety and not be overwhelmed by temporary circumstances. So let's take a look at some techniques for being more grateful. We've all probably heard about a gratitude journal, but a gratitude journal is really an effective way to cultivate a practice of gratitude and genuine gratitude. So it might start out as a way of just jotting some things down, but I have found, and almost everybody I've ever talked to has found, that the more consistently you practice a gratitude journal, the more being in gratitude is cultivated. So set some time aside each day to recall and record those moments of gratitude. For some people, prayer is a form of gratitude. another way of cultivating more gratitude is visual reminders. So I have this rock. It was given to me. I think it was in a training course that I attended, and it's just this flat rock. I don't know, a little bit bigger than, say, a little bit smaller than, say, the size of my hand, and the word gratitude is written on it. So every time I pick that stone up, my fingers I run my fingers along the word gratitude, and it puts me in a state where I just sit and am very mindful of the things that I'm grateful for in that moment. So it might be just some visual reminders like that, like a gratitude rock that triggers thoughts or moments of gratitude. Another great way to get in a more grateful space is to practice appreciation. And it can be as simple as smiling or saying thank you, but it can also be writing letters of gratitude regularly to someone who you may not have really expressed your gratitude to. So practice appreciation. And one of my favorite ways to be more grateful is what I call a gratitude walk. And I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to tie it into the next slide. But a gratitude walk is really about taking some moments in the day and to go for a walk in nature and to be grateful for every single thing that you see and that you experience. And it might start out feeling a little odd, but every time I've done it, I find that towards the end of my walk, I'm just in such a state of awe and such a state of gratitude. So be creative and look for new situations where you actually can find ways to express more gratitude. It'll cultivate more happiness for you. So mindfulness, is your mind full or are you mindful? And mindfulness is defined as a mental state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment while calmly acknowledging and accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations as a therapeutic technique. And I find that it's so easy throughout the day to get caught up in a state of mindful, thinking about the phone call I have to make. Did I pick up the mail? What am I going to make for supper? Is the laundry done? Have I got all the things off my to-do list? My mind can often be very full throughout the day, and I have to be very intentional in creating moments of mindfulness. And so ultimately, it's the focus on the here and now. And achieving it is not easy. You have to really practice at it. But research shows that those who have a conscious and consistent practice with mindfulness are happier because their thoughts are not so consumed by those thoughts of fear or something that might yet to become. So if your mind is full versus mindfulness, you're worrying about all the things that are undone, that your to-do list, and what am I going to have for supper? So you're not in the present moment, and you are taken out of that space of being regularly happy. And when your mind is full, there's a sense of loss of control versus mindfulness, where you feel very in control and able to make your way through any future scenario that might come. It teaches us the ability to center and develop the inner resources that we need that might come in handy with whatever situation might come to us. And it also really deepens our levels of happiness. It can end loops of negative thoughts. So whenever I find myself in a worry situation, or on one of the previous slides, in that pit of despair, I will intentionally put on some meditation music, and I will just get very present with what's happening in my life right here and right now, and appreciate all that's going on, because it'll take me out of that negative loop of thoughts and feelings. Mindfulness will also help you to connect better with others and deepen those relationships that I talked about earlier. It'll deepen your inner sense of contentment, and it'll enhance your experience of gratitude. So mindfulness is such a powerful technique. And if you don't have a regular practice for mindfulness, it's one that I would really encourage. So I'm going to give you a little opportunity now to experience mindfulness. And because it doesn't happen automatically, it takes practice. So just quiet yourself for a moment now. Tune out everything else that's drawing your attention, and just focus on this exercise for a moment. So the goal of mindfulness is to focus on the current moment. So begin first by noticing 5 things that you can see. Something that you don't normally notice. Maybe it's a shadow in a room that you're in, or if you're outside, maybe it's a leaf slowly falling from a tree. Maybe it's a picture on a wall that you haven't really reflected on recently. Maybe it's a pet. Whatever it is, just notice 5 things that you can currently see right now. And now take a moment to notice 4 things that you can hear. So listen and mentally note the things that you can hear. 4 things that you can hear. Maybe it's a bird chirping. Maybe it's the hum of a refrigerator. Whatever it is, just notice 4 things that you can currently hear right now. And now notice 3 things that you can smell. So try to identify smells that you wouldn't normally notice. Maybe it's the freshness of laundry that's tumbling dry right now. Maybe it's the fresh grass outside that's just been mowed. Whatever it is, just notice 3 things that you can smell. And now notice 2 things that you can taste. And you don't actually have to physically taste it. You can just bring to mind those things and how they taste when you've eaten them before. So maybe it's a double chocolate chip cookie that just came out of the oven. Maybe it's that great cup of coffee. Whatever it is, just notice that sensation of taste. And finally, notice 1 thing that you can feel. So maybe it's the clothes that you're wearing and you can feel how they feel on your body. Or maybe it's a breeze. Maybe the window's open and you can feel that breeze coming in. Or it might be an actual emotion, a feeling that you're having right now, having just taken a few moments to be very mindful. Whatever it is, just notice 1 thing that you can feel right now. So thank you for taking that moment to be mindful with me. And once you become more comfortable with the idea of mindfulness, use that 5 steps to really deepen your mindfulness practice. Some other things that you could try that could help with that is turning off automatic pilot by simply bringing your awareness to whatever you're doing, thinking, and sensing in the moment. Notice the thoughts that come up and acknowledge your feelings, positive or negative, whatever they are, just acknowledge them and then allow them to pass. You might even try bringing your awareness to your breath. The focus on breathing and how your body reacts to each breath. For example, the rise and fall of your chest, or how your belly pushes in and out, or even how your lungs expand and contract. Just finding that pattern in your breath is a great way to anchor yourself in the present with mindfulness. And then also another technique is to expand your awareness outward. So are you experiencing any tightness or aches, or perhaps a lightness in your face or your shoulders? Whatever awareness that you might have external, maybe even to the environment around you. So just some additional techniques to sort of help you expand your mindfulness practice. And some of the benefits of a mindfulness practice, again, I've said these before, they lead to happiness, but they also reduce stress and anxiety. They increase your immune functions. They reduce heart disease. They lead to fewer episodes of depression. They increase self-awareness and self-esteem, which is, I talk a lot about that in my Worthy program, but it's so important, especially in women, but also in men, to enhance and increase levels of self-awareness and self-esteem. You'll have more feelings of being in control. You'll increase the quality of your relationships. You'll find that you are surrounded by more social support systems, and in turn, you become more empathetic and compassionate. Another person of note is Nancy Etkoff. She's an evolutionary psychologist and instructor of the science of happiness at the Harvard Medical School. And her research into the question of happiness exposed some pretty surprising results. Her findings reinforce things that we should have probably known all along. So, for example, the fact that having flowers in the house does actually make us happier. She has a TED Talk. Again, you can Google her afterwards, but she has a TED Talk. And in it, she says, we are wired to pursue happiness, not only to enjoy it, but to want more and more of it. She did a study of recovering hospital patients, and two groups were examined. One group faced a brick wall, while another one looked out at trees and nature. And as you can probably by now imagine, that the group who looked out on the brick wall were in the hospital longer, needed more medication, and had more medical complications. So according to her, happiness is contagious, and our happiness will have a positive effect on our friends, but also our friends' friends. I have a very dear friend from early childhood, and she has the most incredible laugh. I love being around her because I know at some point in time, she's going to laugh right from the very bottom of her belly. And when she laughs, it brings such joy to me, and I start laughing, and it completely changes my mood just being around her. She's one person that always comes to mind when I think about how contagious her happiness is. There's also a connection between nature and how it makes us healthier and happier people. So there was this 30-day study that was conducted that involved people doing something wild every day for 30 consecutive days. And participants were asked to complete a survey at the beginning and at the end of the study about their perceived connection to nature and how they interacted with nature and how they felt about their health and happiness. The study showed that there was a scientifically significant increase in their health, happiness, and connection to nature just by being encouraged to spend more time in it. They found happiness was even sustained for months following that challenge. Nature teaches us that there is nothing wrong with us. That's why I love being in nature, because studies show that people's body image improves by focusing on nature. So if you go out in nature, there's such a diversity out there that reinforces that there is beauty in being different. When you're in nature, I find that that time slows down, and that urgency and deadlines melt away. And the ecosystems often that you'll find in nature, they teach us about harmony and balance, and witnessing this renews an appreciation within ourselves of harmony and balance. It can call you back to reality, and it can allow you to surrender comfort and control, and it reinforces appreciation. So as we remove the chaotic noises of society and replace them with the sounds of nature, we become calmer. That's why a lot of the meditation, sleep sounds that you can find often have nature sounds in them, is because they make us calmer. They bring us sort of that peace and balance. It also, I mentioned it earlier when I talked about the gratitude walk, but it really creates this sense of awe. And just being in nature, I have found it gives me this sense that there are so many things at play that are so much larger than I am. So what about what about nature makes you happy? Let's put that in the comment box below. I mentioned this earlier, but studies show that lottery winners do not become significantly happier than they were before. And even extremely rich people are not significantly happier than those who are not rich. In fact, research has found that wealth and material goods does not lead to happiness. It's actually giving away wealth and material goods that actually leads to greater senses of happiness. I read a story once about this millionaire who used the money that he had acquired and started doing he would go to areas in the world that were impoverished, and he would not only bring financial support to that area to better that area in some way, but he would also lend a hand in being a part of improving whatever it was. So it might be a community that needed new fresh water or new water. So he would bring financial resources to help make that happen, but he would also be on the ground helping to dig the well or fill buckets with water, fresh water for people. And that brought him way more joy than the material wealth that he had for 40, 50 years of his life. Volunteering has also been shown to have psychological, mental health, and increases to longevity. Those kinds of benefits come from volunteering. There was also a study that was shown that donating money or spending money on experiences, so maybe it's a trip around the world, or maybe it's a a trip to one of the many wonders around the world. I know that when I went to Niagara Falls, for example, for the very first time, just being in awe of the magnitude and beauty of that was such a great way to have spent some money rather than buying material things. And it correlates positively with happiness. Being more generous and altruistic increases happiness. Volunteering, spending more time helping other people. I've mentioned all those things. Wanted to give you some examples of different ways to give back without actually spending money. So you might volunteer for a cause that you care about. Maybe you cook for those in need. I know people who, especially at Christmas time, will go and help out at the shelters and make sure that people have a great Christmas meal or a Thanksgiving meal or an Easter meal, rather than just only spending that time with family. They go back and spend that time with family later, but they make time first to go and spend with people who may not have family to spend with during Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving. Giving blood. When a family member was sick and needed blood transfusions, being able to go and donate blood was a way for us to feel like we were maybe not giving to that family member directly, but to someone who was also probably in the same situation, who needed our blood in some fashion. I know when I've been a mentor to others, it's a great way for me to give back and feel like I've made a bigger contribution than just day-to-day doing my job. Maybe you could assist at a seniors facility. Maybe you could, I know Habitat for Humanity, building houses. Anybody who's been a part of that talks about what a rewarding experience that is. And there's so many other examples. If you have some great examples that you do, ways to give more and give back, go ahead and put those in the comment box. Share with folks some of your great ideas. And so I want to just give you a few final tips. I'm not going to go into them in too much detail, but some techniques that will help you to cultivate more happiness. So one is savoring the moment. And I'm going to talk about savoring more at a future webinar, because I could spend a whole webinar talking about that. But really savoring a moment. So not just a meal and how great that meal is, but savoring time with family, savoring the peace and tranquility of being at the lake and just reading a book, whatever it is, but really savor that moment and anchor it in memory so that you can bring it back for future experiences as you need. Another technique that you might want to try is taking control of your time. And I'm so good at this. I really am good at portioning out my time and being very careful to not overextend myself. I know lots of people that volunteer for everything and think if I don't do it, then who's going to do it? I was talking to someone actually yesterday, and they so this is May, and since the beginning of the year, they've had 3 significant head colds. And she was saying to me, I think it's because I do everything for everybody and I don't ever take time for me. So taking back control of your time and really honoring and respecting the time that's important for self-care is so important. Another technique that's really important is making time for exercise and adequate sleep. If you think back to the mindfulness slide, is your mind full or are you mindful? Often if our mind is full throughout the day, it's also full when we go to sleep. And so you might go to bed early, but lie awake for 2 hours because your mind's just constantly running. And so making sure that you have adequate exercise and adequate sleep is so important to achieving greater happiness. We talked about relationships earlier, but make sure that you allocate time and attention to those relationships that are super important to you. We talked about mindfulness before, but cultivating time within your day, even just a few minutes. If you're at a work situation and you just take 2 to 5 minutes and just sit there and be mindful, it will increase your levels of happiness. I mentioned gratitude before, and I mentioned giving more, so either financially or in terms of your time. This quote, the key to being happy is knowing you have the power to choose whatever you accept and what to let go. So as I am bringing this webinar to a close, I just wanted to share this quote with you and ask you, how does it make you feel? For me, it makes me feel empowered and excited because I know I have the ability to choose to be happy. It's not just about happyology. It's about being intentional in my own happiness and knowing that when I'm intentional in cultivating more happiness in my life, that I'm actually creating even greater benefits for myself for the long term than I ever was before. So again, in the comment box, why don't you share the number one thing, either how this quote makes you feel or the number one thing in your life right now that makes you extremely happy. So I want to just, before I completely close, I just want to share with you a few things. I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar that I was going to share with you some gifts. I want to talk first about what's coming up, and then I'll share the gifts with you. So coming soon, I'm going to be returning to doing my Worthy Wednesdays. I mentioned that on a previous webinar, but there will be a video that comes out at 8 in the morning, and then I'll come on Facebook Live, ideally around 10 a.m. to sort of talk about that and how it ties into my Worthy program. And if you haven't caught it yet, on Mother's Day, so May 12th, I launched an email series that will inspire women and help them to feel empowered about overcoming challenges, and can help them reach their goals. So if you haven't signed up for that, I'm getting lots of really great feedback on that. And so if you haven't signed up for that and you want to know how to sign up for that, just send me an email. I'm at the end of the slide, or at the end of the webinar, I have a slide that shows you how to get in touch with me, but just get in touch with me if you want to sign up for that Mother's Day, that Lead Like a Woman email series that I launched on Mother's Day. Just let me know. I'm going to be doing, I want to do I haven't decided whether it's going to be a 7-day or a 14-day positivity challenge, or I'm going to take some of the things that I've shared with you on this webinar and take them to a deeper level and actually challenge you each day with something that will increase your levels of happiness, would put you in a practice that would enhance your positivity. And I'm going to be, in the coming weeks, launching a 6-week course on my Worthy program. So especially watch on my Facebook page if you are connected with me there for the launch of that. And I wanted, the free gift I wanted to share with everybody is I want to give away some happiness consultations. So the first 5 people who sign up at BrendaWaltonInspires.com, just go to that web page, and there's a information request form on the side of the page. I believe it's on the left-hand side of the page. Just send me a note that you want to take advantage of this free happiness consultation, and the first 5 people who sign up for one will get a free 30-minute consultation with me. So I want to give those away for those of you who stayed with me through the webinar, and for those of you who might be watching it on replay. I want to give away 5 of those. And then I also wanted to share with you that I do these personal values assessment. They're really powerful in helping understand who you are and what you hold dear and what upsets you. It really is the things that motivate you. And once you understand those things that drive you, it will help you find other ways to enhance happiness tied to your personal values. And so I do that normally for about $500 with people. For those people who are watching this either in the replay, I can offer that to you for $297, and anybody who signs up for that in the next 48 hours will actually get it for $147. So if you're watching it later than 48 hours, you can have it for $297. It's regularly $500. So just wanted to offer that to you as well too. And then finally, I just wanted to say thank you. Feel free to contact me with any additional help that you might need. You can contact me through my website, or my email address is there. You can phone me directly. Go ahead and make sure I mention that I have some things coming up, and I generally post about them on Facebook. So go ahead and find me on Facebook if you're not following me there, or on Twitter, because you don't want to miss some of the, especially the 6-week Worthy course that's coming up. You probably want to make sure you're able to take advantage of that. And I just really appreciate those of you who joined me today, and those of you who will be watching the replay. Feel free to reach out to me if you need any additional help, because sometimes it's difficult to find someone, a friend or a family member, who can support you in the way that you need to be. And so let me be that person for you. Let me help you to identify things that will remove those roadblocks for you. So thank you and goodbye. Have a great day, and especially have a happy day. Bye.